श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः। If any of you feel comfortable in chanting, you chant the last three mantras, 15, 16, 17. Who feels comfortable and confident? I'll chant, follow me. Ashabdamasparsham ashabdamasparshamarupam avyayam tatarasam nityam magantavachayat anadyanantam mahatah param dhruvam nichayatam mukhate uktva नाचिकेतमुपाख्यानं मृत्युप्रोक्तं सनातनं
ब्रह्मलोके महीयते
परमं गुह्यं श्रावयेद् ब्रह्म संसदि
तदानन्त्याय कल्पते तदानन्त्याय कल्पत इति।
Finish the last mantra 15. With that, the Upadesha is complete. Like in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Upadesha is complete. And he ends up by saying that one has to understand that this is Dhruvam, Kutastham, Kutastha Prithviyaadivat, Apekshikam Nityatvam. We briefly talked about what is Apekshika Nityatvam, what is Kutastha Nityatvam, what is Pravaha Nityatvam. Pravaha Nityatvam is a flow of thing, unending flow, perennial flow. Classic example is the flow of the river Ganga and of the Vedas. Vedas also are Pravaha Nityam because the end of the Kalpa, everything disappears. Veda doesn't disappear, it becomes unmanifest. So when another Kalpa starts, that is our whole model is like that, no? Kalpa after Kalpa after Kalpa, it starts and a new Brahmaji takes charge. And this Jnanam is also one which becomes unmanifest and manifests itself again in the new Kalpa. You can understand the difference between Brahman and Brahmaji. One very easy difference you can check here. Brahman is Nirvikara, nothing. But each time Kalpa comes about, there's a Brahmaji, the firstborn. And with him is reborn or remanifested the Vedas. The Vedas also do not show a beginning, anadi, because it's cycle. Vedas have always been there because it's not subject to time. You know, you use the English word eternal. It creates differences because people view the word eternal differently. But we understand the word nityam, and in this case, pravaha nityam, there is no mistake. This knowledge is about the dhruvam, kutastha nityam. That Brahman never becomes anything else, doesn't even become unmanifest, because it is. That's it. Kalpa, everything else after that becomes unmanifest and remanifests. Brahman, I, Atma, remains unchanging because it is not on a time scale. That is Kutastha Nityam. So you understand the difference between Kutastha Nityam, Apekshika Nityam, and Pravaha Nityam. Therefore, one understands that the knowledge that I am trying to gain is the difference again in making between Veda and knowledge that is available to us from Vedanta. Veda is Pravaha Nityam. This knowledge that you gain is Kutastha Nityam because it is the same knowledge that is there in the Veda, but now unfolded by a Guru.
Okay.
That knowledge which becomes then absolute, Kutastham. Once that knowledge is Nichaya, Nishchitya, Krutva, Matva, Nididhyasitva, Nishchitya, then the one who has got it, all the time Shastra keeps telling us this is Rahasyam. Continues to say that. The previous mantra I said it is like a walking on the razor's edge, as difficult as that to gain this knowledge. This knowledge, nichaya, avagamya, tamatmanam, avagamya is what? As the self. That Brahman, which is Kutastha Nityam, is I. Then mrityumukat, mrityu-gocharat, avidya, kama, karma, lakshanat, pramuchyate. Is freed from all of that. Because the only Kutastha Nityam is what? Brahman. And when this knowledge is pakka, what is that knowledge? That Brahman is I. Therefore, no question of either being apekshika nityam or pravaha nityam. No change, ever. When I say ever, don't put it on the time scale. Not subject to time. Trikalatitaha. Mrityumukat, avidya, kama, karma, lakshanat, pramuchyate, is freed. What happens to Sharira? Sharira continues till it falls. And it falls, that's it. There is no more Sharira required. This is the full teaching. That teaching one has to grasp, make one's own, assimilate it, and that aparoksha jnanam, that Brahman, which is the Kotas Nityam, is I. I is not anything else. Although I use I for various transactional purposes in this Jagat, it is only limited to transactional purposes in this Jagat. I is only that Kutastha Nityam, which is Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Avyayam, Nityam, Anadi, Anantam, Ityadi. This knowledge totally frees a person. Shruti continues to talk about it in the further mantras here and in later adhyaya to re-emphasize, to make sure that anyone who is interested in knowing can know. To repeatedly explain this in different ways. So in the next mantra, Acharya says, Prastuta Vijnanastutyarthamaha Shrutihi.
Prastuta Vijnanastutyarthamaha Shrutihi.
Shruti is praise, to glorify. This is a profound knowledge. And that profundity has to be understood. What knowledge? Prastuta Jnanam. The one that is under discussion. To praise that, to glorify, to make us understand the profundity of that knowledge. The Shruti continues in the next mantra. This is the introduction that Bhashyakara gives. Nachiketamupakyanam
Nachiketamupakyanam
Mrityuproktagum sanatanam
Mrityu-proktagum sanatanam
Uktva Shrutva cha Medhavi
Uktva Shrutva cha Medhavi
Brahmaloke Mahiyate.
Brahmaloke Mahiyate.
By saying Uktva Shrutva, this knowledge. But Medhavi is the person with a discriminative thinking, who has removed all the obstacles, who is able to connect the distant dots, who has the Medha Shakti, who has gained the Medha Shakti, to not get distracted by apparent non-connection. Such a person is a Medhavi. But so far, all these Shishyas have been listening to, along with Nachiketa, listening to the Guru. Yamadharmaraja. Yamadharmaraja has been explaining this in these last many mantras. And Nachiketa has been listening to it. So have all of us. So have millions of other people over the last many thousand years. They, really speaking, it should be Shrutva Uktva. Because we first hear. We hear this. And having prepared ourselves, we are able to hear it and grasp this knowledge. Therefore, Shravanam and Mananam, grasp this knowledge, remove all doubts, and then Nididhyasanam to make it clear that that Brahmaji, that Brahma that I'm talking about, Brahman I'm talking about is I. While I'm still in this Sharira, I have to understand this. Therefore, having heard and understood this, I have to do Nididhyasanam. We have seen earlier, Nididhyasanam is the process of serious contemplative thinking of the words as unfolded by the Guru during the time of Shruti. When you're hearing those words talk to you. And to understand those words, including the ones we've been reading all this time, we have to do the Shravanam repeatedly. And the Nididhyasanam is, like I said, contemplation of the words. Now, when you hear somebody and you learn something, how do you make that learning pakka? The simplest thing to do is to catch hold of a murga and teach him. Because you cannot teach unless your knowledge is pakka. Any subject, any level. Try teaching basic physics to a 5th standard child. As it is, what is happening is that what the children learn in class 5 is probably what you learnt in your BSc in college. They're all going up. But try teaching very basic thing. I will give you a simple example. I've come from an engineering college and supposed to know a lot of things about sciences. One child, class 4, 5, 6, something like that, has been learning about levers in school. And he had a question. He said, I cannot lift, let us say, 1 ton stone by myself. I have limited capacity, limited power. But if I use a lever with a long enough handle and put the stone at one end, I can lift the stone. I'm not using any external energy. I'm not using motor. I'm not using any crane or lift or anything. It's the same body, same power that I had earlier. But now I'm using a long lever. Where did the extra power come from? Try explaining to a child. Unless you're very clear in your mind, you cannot explain it. So when you try to tell somebody else what you have learned, then a lot of things fall in place. That is why it is said, a quarter of your learning comes from the Guru. A quarter comes from discussion with your fellow students. A quarter comes from your own contemplation. And another quarter comes in time. So in fact, in college, what happens many times, many of you experienced it, I'm sure, so have I. If you're strong in a particular subject, some of your other classmates will flock to you saying, explain this to me. And if you're not so clear on some other subject, but somebody else seems to be clear, we go to him and say, okay, explain this to me. That's how we have this possibility of gaining clarity. So, Shrutva Uktva. I hear, I think, I compare with all the knowledge that I already have. And having done that, I think I'm clear. Then I try to explain to somebody else. And it doesn't come out right. Questions come to your own mind. How do we explain something like this? So that you either go back to your notes and look at it saying, how did I understand it? Was the teacher saying something else? Then you go back and try to tell somebody else again. So each time, in fact, not only teaching, each time you study your notes, one more level of clarity comes. And each time you try to explain to somebody else, it takes you to one more level. Shrutva uktva. Having heard and having explained to somebody else. It also is part of the nididhyasana exercise. There is also nididhyasana. But he's saying very clearly, you have to be a qualified person. You have to be medhavi. Because this is one tricky subject. In many places, it contradicts what looks like common knowledge. In many places, it contradicts what I had concluded already. So I have to be open-minded. Attitude has to be one of learning. And the mind itself has to be prepared well enough to be able to connect what looks like disparate things. Therefore, a medhavi. Uktva shrutva cha medhavi. Uktva cha shrutva cha. That medhavi brahmaloke mahiyate. This can be very confusing. So we have to again take help from Bhashyakara. Brahmaloke, immediately the immediate meaning is in the Brahmaloka. But in the context, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Mahiyate means becomes worshipful. So if you take this phrase, it looks as if you go to Brahmaloka and become worshipable. Such a word exists. Bhashyakara explains here, Brahmaloke means actually being Brahman, because that is your knowledge. That person also becomes Mahiyate, Upasyate. So if we catch that verb, who becomes Upasyate? That person who is a Medhavi, who has done enough Shravanam, enough Mananam, and enough Nididhyasanam, both in the form of contemplative thinking and in the form of contemplative thinking driven by trying to explain to somebody else. What? Heard what? Explained what? Yes. Nachiketam upakhyanam. This knowledge that was given to Nachiketa, that was heard by Nachiketa. Nachiketam upakhyanam. Upakhyana generally means story. But here, again, the meaning has to be that which is taught or heard by Nachiketa and all of us. And that knowledge which is given to him by his Guru, who Mrityu, Lord Mrityu, Dharmaraja. Mrityu proktam, Mrityuna proktam, given by, taught by, said by Lord Mrityu, and heard by Nachiketa. What is that knowledge? Sanatanam. The word Sanatanam itself is We know the word means that which is not subject to time. Therefore, we say that our dharma is Sanatana Dharma because it has no beginning, no end. It is the dharma which is not so bound by time. It is Kutastha Nityam. We connect to the previous mantra. It is that Kutastha Nityam Jnanam, which is available in the Vedas, which itself is Pravaha Nityam, because that has been opened out, unfolded by a guru, which is always available. That Sanatana Jnanam, heard by Nachiketa and told to him by Mrityu, Lord Dharma, Dharmaraja, Yama Dharmaraja. Because some words are little, you can't take the direct, immediate meaning. Bhashyakara explains these words a little bit more. Nachiketam,
Nachiketam,
Nachiketasa Praptam,
Nachiketasa Praptam,
Nachiketa, by Nachiketa, gained by, obtained by, because he heard that, Nachiketasa Praptam is Nachiketam.
Nachiketa.
Yeah. So Nachiketam, the word is Nachiketasa Praptam, Nachiketam. And Mrityuna Proktam,
Mrityuna Proktam,
Mrityu Proktam.
Mrityu Proktam.
They're all compound words. Mrityu Proktam is a compound word which is Bhashyakara breaks it down for us. Mrityuna Proktam, said by Lord Mrityu. Idam
Idamakhyanam,
Akhyanam, idam akhyanam, this akhyanam. Akhyanam typically, like I said, if you take the dictionary meaning, it will be story. But he says, Upakhyanam.
Upakhyanam,
Upakhyanam is teaching. That which has been taught. Vallitraya Lakshanam,
Vallitraya Lakshanam,
Sanatanam,
Sanatanam,
Chirantanam, Vaidikatvat.
Chirantanam Vaidikatvad,
Taught in these three vallis, Vallitraya Lakshanam. This knowledge, Upakhyanam, which has been taught by Lord Mrityu, in these three vallis, actually there is teaching really starts only in the third valli. We know that the first valli is more of a, literally a Akhyanam, which has a lot of valuable lessons to learn, but it is not Upadesha. It is not really Upakhyanam. Second valli also is not really Upakhyanam, more of praise of Nachiketa and the praise of this knowledge, comparison with this knowledge and praise Jnanam, etc. But the real Upanishad teaching starts in the third valli. But he says, Vallitraya Lakshanam, Sanatanam. Sanatanam, he explains as Chirantanam. No beginning, no end. Chirantanam. Why is it no beginning, no end? Because this is Vedika knowledge. Vaidikatvat. Because this is Veda, knowledge given to us by the Veda. That knowledge is not temporary knowledge. Even if a person who's understood this were to lose all his memory, it doesn't matter. It's never going to go away. There's nothing to go away. It is an established fact. All one does is recognize that fact. Vaidikatvat, Uktva,
Uktva,
Brahmanebhyah,
Brahmanebhyah,
Shrutva cha,
Shrutva cha,
Acharyebhyah,
Acharyebhyah,
Medhavi,
Medhavi,
This Medhavi, who is the qualified person who's got removed all the obstacles in the process of gaining this knowledge, who's done enough to keep his mind absolutely steady, undistracted by ragadvesha, undistracted by small ends, who is able to see the value which is infinite of this knowledge compared to any other type of knowledge which is always finite, however big. Such a person, uktva brahmanebhyah, to qualified people. Brahmanebhyah here you can take as to those people who are looking for the knowledge of Brahman. Brahmanebhyah. Shrutvacha. Acharya. Having heard repeatedly from the Acharya, from a qualified teacher, Shrutvacha Acharyebhyah, such a Medhavi, Brahmaiva Lokaha. This is explained. Brahma Lokaha is the word in the mantra. Bhashyakara says Brahma Lokaha would, Brahma Loke Mahiyate. That it is not, you should not take the literal meaning of saying in the Brahma Loka. It is Brahma Eva Lokaha. Here the word Lokaha refers to the person who has understood himself or herself to be Brahman. Brahmaiva Lokaha, Brahma Lokaha. In that person, that is Brahma Loke. It is not in Brahma Loka. Brahma Loka is Saptami. We are not talking about in that Brahma Loka. We are talking about in that person who is Brahman, who understands his Brahman. So, Brahmaiva Lokaha, Brahma Lokaha, Tasmin Brahma Loke. In that person, Mahiyate, Upasyaha, is worthy of worship. Why? Atma Bhuta San. Atma Bhuta means recognizing Brahman as the self. Atma Bhutaha Upasyaha Bhavati. He is worthy of worship. It's like, as far as we are concerned, is Ishvara. Now we understand what Swamiji always keeps saying, you can't start the teaching by telling him you are Ishvara. But having gone through all this, one can recognize what the Guru is saying when he says, you and Ishvara are the same. Therefore, you are Upasyaha. The body still continues. Although we might see some things which look very strange to us, sometimes you might find that that person with the same sharira does not care about the sharira. The way we care about sharira, the way we go to the gym and we control our eating, no carbs, no this thing, I eat only this, no sugar. I think we do it excessively these days, but that's what we do. It might look strange to us, but he's still upasyaha. Because somewhere we recognize that there is something special about that person. Something which makes him different from the ordinary people who are still struggling. The imagery that I have is, while everybody is bobbing up and down in huge water, struggling to stay afloat, this person is calmly standing there as if there is no water, there's no force acting on him. Such a person. Therefore, all those things in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, samam in all conditions, labha, labha in all conditions, sukha, dukkha, heat, cold, shitoshna, sukha, dukkeshu, all of them is unaffected. You're not being buffeted by those waves of water. Such a person is upasya. Upasya bhavati iti abhipraya. Bhashyakara is not even, forget about contradicting what the Shastra says, he is only expanding it and expressing the same in different words. Each word he expands and says, this is abhipraya. So, like a phala. One who has understood nichaya, mrityumukhat pramuchyate, we saw. And he or she gains the status of Ishvara. Really speaking, everybody is only Ishvara. There is no separate Ishvara. But in our false notion, we think of ourselves as a limited being, an incomplete being, an incompetent being, with so much scope for growing. That false notion is removed, that's all. There is no new knowledge. Knowledge is always there. Those false assumptions have been removed, have been shown to be false, and therefore the truth shines and can never change, irrespective of what happens. I was thinking, there are people I know, one person I knew for sure, an uncle of mine, extremely erudite person, had studied everything. But toward the end, he was affected with dementia. And we from our side looking at him saying, my God, what a knowledgeable person, what an erudite person. Look what he's become now. He has become nothing. The body has become that. The mind has become that. He couldn't care less. But to us, looking at from outside saying, my God, what has happened? It's exactly the way some people come and tell me, oh, I used to know him before. Very smart, with fancy sunglasses, suit and tie. Look at him today. That's all their understanding. For us, looking at it from outside may look very strange. But the whole process is very clear. Ya imam paramam guhyam
imam paramam guhyam
shravayed brahma samsadi
shravayed brahma samsudhi
prayata shraddhakaleva
prayata shraddhakaleva
sadanantyaya kalpate
tadanantyaya kalpate
sadanantyaya kalpata iti.
tadanantyaya kalpata iti.
These three vallis, which begin with the story and slowly evolve into the highest form of teaching, like any other Upanishad, are enough to give one absolute freedom. Kevalam, this is enough. But Swamiji, I've been trying, I don't really understand. I think I understand, but I go back, it doesn't seem clear. Yes, true. Therefore, Shastra tells us, don't worry. Even if you don't understand, or if you only understand partially, if you can't make out why the differences are there and you can't reconcile the differences, don't worry. You chant these three valleys, just chant them. It will by itself bless you in time to gain the depth of understanding required. It will help you in clarifying your mind. It will help you in giving you manashanti. And with that manashanti, with that, all the obstacles will slowly get removed. And the time will come when the meaning will become clearer. Somebody said to one person who was going, little young person, went to a guru. I'm just learning Bhagavad Gita, like we do with the children here. We teach Bhagavad Gita chanting only. That is good enough. You want Bhagavad Gita. In fact, it is said that if you have a Bhagavad Gita book in the house, that itself is a blessing. Even if you never read it. And if you can read or chant the Bhagavad Gita, even if you don't understand or write the Bhagavad Gita, it will bless you. If you do it in samashti with a lot of other people, it's even better. And if you can really sit with the Guru and understand what the Bhagavad Gita says, will not happen in one round. Unfortunately, fortunately, it is knowledge which is moksha jnana. If it is as easy, many more people in the world would go doing this. But it's not. Bhagavad Gita itself says, no, so many people are there in this world, hardly anybody even makes an attempt to know. And even amongst those who make an attempt to know, very few actually know the truth. It is something which has to go through a process. Go through it once, twice, thrice, 4 times. Each time you will find that level of understanding getting better and better. And as you come to a certain level, try to explain to somebody else. Whether it's Bhagavad Gita or these Upanishads. Upanishads are a little tougher because Bhagavad Gita is a little easier. It talks about things which are more easy to understand, more practical. But these 3 valleys, if you chant, itself very powerful. Every Upanishad says that, okay? Kaivalya Upanishad says the same thing. You chant Kaivalya Upanishad, Kevalasya Bhavam, it's enough. But that's true. Every Upanishad says the same thing. It's just a matter of understanding. Some are more elaborate, some are not so elaborate. But we study all of them because it gives us different perspectives, makes our understanding each time a little better. One is to repeat the same Upanishad over and over again. Another is to read many different Upanishads to give many different perspectives. So the clarity gets better and better and better. Even just chanting this, which is one of the reasons I like to do this in the class. I know we don't get the window to chant them every day. We should, technically speaking. But at least in the class, let's chant a certain section of the Upanishad. But I would encourage you definitely to chant whenever you get a window, to chant these valleys. This Paramam Guhyam. Why is it Paramam Guhyam? Why you've done this again and again and again? Bhagavad Gita says so. Upanishads tells you it is not straightforward reading and getting. It is not 2 plus 2 is 4. It requires a Sukshma Buddhi. Already Upanishad said that. How do you develop the Sukshma Buddhi? These days you get a lot of these games on mobile. And I know people who will download a game and go on at it again and again and again and again till they perfect it. And they say, the more I play, the more perfect I become. True of this also. In fact, more true of this than that. The more you read, the more you think about it, more you contemplate upon it, more you discuss it, more the clarity. But don't try to discuss with somebody who has no idea what this is. Again, Upanishad says so, Gita says so. If people are doing something else, let them do what they want. Because you will try to teach them and they will confuse you. Don't even try. Leave them alone. But teach or talk to people, discuss with people who have some basic understanding of the value of something like this. Now, you see how valuable a program like a 3-year program along with the Guru, in a Gurukulam, what a difference it makes. Because all you think about 24/7 is the same knowledge. The doubts you have about this, the non-clarity that is there, and all you discuss is only this. With whom? With people who are also interested in the same thing. Not people who want to discuss with you what is the latest movie that has come from Bollywood. You will find as you get this to a certain level, that discussion with such people becomes non-viable after 5 minutes. For a few minutes, you can talk politics. You can talk about what Trump has said today, new thing he has said today, and laugh at it. But after a few minutes, you don't want to talk about it. Everything goes down only to this knowledge. Because you understood that there is something much, much, much bigger than any of these things. Therefore, it has to be among people who are of a similar bent of mind. Ya imam paramam guhyam shravayet brahma samsadi. It is, shravayet literally means make them hear. You chant. Where? In a Brahma Samsadi. Samsad means a gathering. Or we have Samsad in Parliament, no? They only talk nonsense most of the time, but that's Samsad. Brahma Samsadi, among people who have this buddhi, who are seeking Brahman even if they don't know it. So amongst that kind of group, you chant. Bhagavad Gita is a good example. For many years, we used to chant the entire 18 chapters every Ekadashi day. Most people didn't understand the meanings. But just the chanting did something to them. Especially when you're in Samashti chanting. Something happens. At the end of it, one feels elevated. So there is immediate gain in the Laukika value also. That in turn slowly will bring us closer and closer to this knowledge. So Ya imam paramam guhyam shravayet brahma samsadi. Also says, prayataha
प्रयतः
shraddhakaleva
साधिकालेव
tadanantyaya kalpate
तदान्ध्याय कल्पते
tadanantyaya kalpata iti.
तदानन्ध्याय कल्पत इति.
Prayataha means, one of the meanings is with certain religious purity, certain piousness, which means an attitude. In Kathopanishad, we've seen you approach a guru, samit panihi, in your pani in your hand, samit in your hand, an attitude of saying there is something to know. So when you chant, in this case, we just chant something to gain. See, in the previous mantra, he said, Uktva Shrutva cha Medavi Brahmaloke Mahiyate. There he's talking about teaching. The Upanishad is talking about teaching. Here it's just simply saying, do chanting. Enough. But do it with an attitude. It's a pious attitude, with devotion, with ritually pure. Shraddha Kaleva. At the time of Shraddham, that is one ritual, as it happens, almost many more people follow than any other ritual. Somehow, we have a feeling that it is for my ancestors, therefore I have to do it. My father, my grandfather. Therefore, even people who otherwise do nothing, no rituals, tend to do, oh, this is Amavasa, I have to do Shraddham. In some form, they will do it. Therefore, Shraddham is a very important part of our Vedic rituals. So, Shraddha Kale, if in a Shraddha period, one chants these three vallis. So, next time you do Shraddham or somebody else Shraddham you attend, please chant these three vallis. It is very powerful. Prayataha Shraddha Kaleva Tadanantyaya Kalpate. Huge benefit. It is very helpful, very conducive for gaining enormous benefits. And these benefits are both Laukika and for our spiritual growth. Tadanantyaya Kalpate. And as always, because these are all oral traditions, how do you know you come to the end of a section or a chapter? Usually, the last line is repeated. Tadanantyaya kalpate, tadanantyaya kalpata iti. Same sentence is repeated. Even when we chant shlokas, we tend in the last paragraph, we always chant the last line again. Here, I'll take any one example. Viditanamaya vishadaikakala na cha kinchana kanchanamasti guru dhrutameva videhi kripam sahajam bhava shankara deshikame sharanam bhava shankara deshikame sharanam. Iti end is indicated. Here also the last line is repeated. So, ya prayata hemam paramam guhyam brahma samsadi shraddha kaleva shravayed tad anantyaya kalpate. Tadanantyaya kalpate. Tadanantyaya kalpate iti. Bhashyakara says a few words, not much to say in this. But he says we will read that. Ya kashchit imam grantham paramam.
Imam grantham paramam
Paramam means prakrishtam guhyam
prakushtam
gopyam
gopyam
shravayed
shravayet
granthorthascha
granthorthascha
grantataha arthascha. Either you just chant the grantha or with meaning. Either way. Brahmananam samsadi brahma samsadi
brahmananam sansadi brahma sansadi
prayataha
prayatah
शुचिर भूत्वा
शुचिर भूत्वा
श्राद्ध कालेवा
श्राद्धकालेव
श्रावयेत्
श्रावयेद्
भुञ्जानानां
भुञ्जानानां
तत्श्राद्धं
तच्छ्राद्धम्
अस्य आनन्त्याय
अस्य आनन्त्याय
अनन्तफलाय
अनन्तफलाय
कल्पते
कल्पते
सम्पद्यते.
सम्पद्यते.
Anyone, ya kashchid, this grantham, which is paramam, which is prakrishtam is guhyam. Many places we've seen this word guhyam, gopyam, which is secret. It is the most open secret in the world. It is so obvious, but we've got a veil, we don't see it. It is guhyam, gopyam, shravayed. You chant, you make others hear. Grantataha, that means just chanting. Athava arthatascha. Or by also explaining the meaning. So it depends upon the group. If you are with, like, if you talk about Gita to children, you teach them chanting. Correct chanting, correct pronunciation, correct way of chanting, good enough. But as they grow to the 9th, 10th standard, come to a stage when they can understand, you have to start teaching them the meaning. So, depending upon the group that you're addressing, you're with, either chant or, for example, if you in a Shraddham, you may not have the window to go into meanings of all these. We've taken how many classes to go through the 3 valleys? But you may be able to just chant the whole lot. Make copies, give to everybody and say chant along. So you can make copies in Sanskritam and a transliteration of that as well. Brahmananam samsadi. Amongst the people who are discriminative, who have if you go back to your Ratha Kalpana, who have a buddhi which is discriminative, who can lead their lives in the right direction. So Brahmananam samsadi, Brahma samsadi. Amongst the group of people who are ready for this knowledge. Prayataha, he explains, Prayataha is Shuchir Bhutva. Bahya Antara Shuchihi. Cleanliness, both in terms of externals and internal cleaning. One does not get into prayer mode without a bath, for example. One cleanses the mind of negative thoughts and ill thoughts before you get into this. So, Shuchir Bhutva, Shraddha Kaleva. As I told you, Shraddha Kala is when we do Shraddha for the ancestors. And with that thought only, most people actually go and do Shraddha. He says, Shravayet Bhunjananam. When when you feed these Brahmanas doing Shraddha, it is said that you feed your ancestors. So at that time, when you are feeding them, then the Shraddham Asya Anantyaya, Tadanantyaya. He explains that word also. Anantaphalaya. Gain, enormous, can gain. It is the whole situation becomes very conducive for that kind of gain. Kalpate. Kalpate comes from the krip dhatu. Krip meaning samarthya, capable, powerful, etc. So he explains that sampadhyate, the possibility of gaining. Iti tritiya valli bhashyam. And last line also we will read before we close. Iti Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharyasya
Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya
Govinda Bhagavat Pujya Pada Shishyasya
Govind Bhagavat Pujya Pada Sishyasya
Srimad Shankara Bhagavataha Kritau
Srimad Bhagavad
Kathopanishad Bhashye
Kathopanishad Bhashye
Prathamodhyayah. This, therefore, is the, like we say at the end of each chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we say this, Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya, his Guru, Shankaracharya's Guru, Govinda Padacharya. If you ever go to Indore, go and into the place where he met his Guru and go to Upadesha. It's a very interesting place to go. It is on the banks of the Narmada. Sri Govinda Pada Pujya Pada Shishyasya, Shishya of Sri Govinda Padacharya, Srimad Shankara Bhagavataha Kritau. It is a Bhashyam written by Sri Shankaracharya. What Bhashyam? Kathopanishad Bhashye. In the Kathopanishad Bhashyam, Prathamodhyayah. It finishes the first chapter. With this, like I said, Upadesha is complete.
Yeah.
But there's still a second chapter to go with 3 vallis. We will look at that in the further classes. But before that, as I said to all of you, if you have any questions, doubts, comments, observations, whatever, we will allocate the next classes to do that, to address those questions. Please send it on either in the group or to Anand. I've requested him to compile all the questions and put them together. We will discuss them. And please don't hesitate. There is no question which is a silly question. Every question is a valid question. Every doubt is a valid doubt. They have to be cleared. That is how Mananam takes place. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.
नमस्ते स्वामी जी नमस्ते गुरु जी
Om Swamiji.
हरि
हरि ओम स्वामी जी, धन्यवाद।
Om.